Officer Marcus Chan stood frozen in the doorway of cell block D7, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to reveal what shouldn't be possible. The cell was empty, completely, impossibly empty. Code red, he shouted into his radio, his voice cracking. Prisoner 4782 is gone. Repeat, Daniel Ashford has escaped. Within minutes, Blackwood Maximum Security Prison erupted into chaos. Alarms shrieked through the corridors. Red emergency lights bathed the concrete walls in blood-colored illumination. Guard boots thundered down hallways as the entire facility went into lockdown. Warden Patricia Holloway arrived at the cell within 5 minutes, her face pale despite her 30 years of experience. She stared at the empty space where Daniel Ashford should have been sleeping. The bed was made with military precision, the toilet unused, the sink dry. It was as if no one had ever been there at all. "How?" she whispered, then louder. "How?" Marcus stepped forward, his hands shaking. "Ma'am, I did bed check at 10 p.m., just like protocol. He was there, sleeping. I saw him with my own eyes. I came back at 11 p.m. for the hourly check, and..." He gestured helplessly at the empty cell. "The door," Holloway said sharply. "The door was locked?" "Yes, ma'am. Still locked when I arrived. I had to use my key to open it. The lock shows no signs of tampering. I checked." Holloway stepped into the cell, her experienced eyes scanning every inch. Daniel Ashford had been in Blackwood for 15 years, convicted of murdering 7 people in what the media called the chessboard killings. Each victim had been left with a chess piece, each crime scene arranged like a board position. Daniel had never confessed, never shown remorse, never spoke more than necessary. And now, impossibly, he was gone. The cell was exactly 12 feet by 8 feet. Solid concrete walls, 3 feet thick. One small window, 8 inches wide, with steel bars embedded in foot-thick glass. A steel door with electronic locks and mechanical backup. Video cameras covering every angle of the corridor outside. There was no way out. "Pull the security footage," Holloway ordered. "Every camera from 10 p.m. until now. And get me the architectural plans for the cell block. There has to be an explanation." In the security office, Holloway and her team watched the footage with growing disbelief. The corridor camera showed Marcus doing his 10 p.m. check, opening the cell door, looking inside, nodding with satisfaction, and locking it again. The timestamp was clear, 10:02 p.m. Then, nothing. For 58 minutes, the corridor was empty. Not a single person passed, not a flicker of movement. At 11 p.m. exactly, Marcus returned, unlocked the door. His face transformed from routine boredom to absolute shock. He stumbled backward, then lunged forward to look inside. Called for backup. Everything matched his account. But the cell itself had no camera. Privacy regulations prohibited it. They could see the corridor leading to it, but not inside. "Rewind," Holloway said. "Go back further. I want to see the entire day." They watched Daniel Ashford's final day in reverse. Lunch delivery at noon. Guard confirmed he ate. Breakfast at 7 a.m., consumed normally. The previous night's bed check. Daniel sleeping peacefully. Back and back they went, reviewing 3 days of footage. Daniel Ashford appeared in every single check. Eating, sleeping, reading, pacing. A model prisoner, as always. Never violent, never aggressive, never breaking a single rule in 15 years. "He's a ghost," muttered Officer Lisa Torres, the night shift supervisor. "He didn't walk out. He couldn't have." "People don't just vanish," Holloway said firmly, though her voice wavered. "Get me the building plans, now." The architectural drawings revealed nothing helpful. The cell block was built in 1987, designed specifically to hold the most dangerous criminals. No tunnels, no hidden passages, no architectural anomalies. Just solid concrete and steel. "What about the window?" suggested Marcus. They went back to the cell. The window was intact. Bars solid, glass unbroken. Even if someone could somehow squeeze through 8 inches of space, which was physically impossible for an adult human, they'd be on the 3rd floor with a 40-foot drop to a concrete yard surrounded by 3 layers of fencing topped with razor wire. The ventilation system, Torres offered. The vent in the ceiling was 6 inches square. A child couldn't fit through it, let alone a grown man, and it led only to a sealed air circulation system monitored by sensors. Holloway stood in the center of the cell, slowly turning 360 degrees. There's something we're missing, something obvious. Her phone rang. It was the FBI. Warden Holloway, this is Special Agent David Park. We've been informed of the Ashford escape. We're sending a team immediately. Do not, I repeat, do not let anyone touch that cell until we arrive. Agent Park, I assure you we're conducting a thorough... You don't understand. Park interrupted, his voice tense. Daniel Ashford isn't just a murderer. He's complicated. We need to examine that cell ourselves. We'll be there in 2 hours. The line went dead.
Special Agent David Park arrived with a team of 6 agents and equipment that looked more suited for a science laboratory than a prison. He was in his early 40s, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Everyone out," he ordered, not rudely, but with absolute authority. "We need the cell completely isolated." Holloway bristled. "This is my prison, Agent Park. You can't just..." "Warden," Park said quietly, pulling her aside. "What I'm about to tell you is classified. Daniel Ashford was never just a serial killer. He was part of a government program called Project Labyrinth. We were training individuals with unusual cognitive abilities, pattern recognition beyond normal human capacity, memory that borders on photographic, the ability to perceive and manipulate probability. You're telling me he's psychic?" Holloway said flatly. "No, nothing supernatural, but his brain works differently. He can see patterns where others see chaos. He can calculate odds and outcomes faster than computers. And he's been planning this escape for 15 years. Park's team set up equipment in the cell, ultraviolet lights, thermal scanners, chemical detection. They worked in silence for 3 hours while Holloway watched, growing more frustrated. Finally, Park called her in. "Look at this." He shone an ultraviolet light on the concrete wall near the bed. Faint markings appeared. Hundreds of tiny scratches, invisible to the naked eye. What is it? A calendar? Every single day for 15 years, marked with microscopic precision, and here, he moved the light to another section. Mathematical formulas, probability calculations, guard rotation patterns analyzed down to the second, camera blind spots mapped with millimeter accuracy. But none of this explains how he got out of a locked cell, Holloway insisted. Park looked at her with something like pity. That's because he didn't.
"What do you mean he didn't escape?" Holloway demanded. "The cell is empty." Park gestured to his team. One of them, a young woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward with a tablet. "Warden Holloway, have you ever heard of the psychological phenomenon called selective attention?" she asked. In 1999, researchers did an experiment. They asked people to watch a video and count basketball passes. In the middle of the video, someone in a gorilla suit walked through the frame. 50% of people didn't see it. They were so focused on counting passes that their brain filtered out the gorilla entirely. "I'm not following," Holloway said impatiently. Park took over. Daniel Ashford spent 15 years studying human psychology, guard patterns, and the architecture of perception. He didn't escape from the cell, Warden. He made you believe he had. "That's impossible. We saw the empty cell." Did you? Park moved to the cell doorway. Officer Chen, when you did your 11 p.m. check, describe exactly what you saw. Marcus stepped forward confused. I opened the door. The cell was empty. The bed was made. No one was there. Where did you look first? The bed, of course. That's where he sleeps. And then? The rest of the cell, the toilet, the corner, everywhere. Did you step inside? Marcus hesitated. No, I saw it was empty from the doorway and immediately called for backup. Park nodded slowly. Warden, when you arrived, did you step inside? Holloway frowned. Yes, I walked in and examined everything. How far in? All the way to the back wall? She thought back. I stood in the center. I could see everything from there.
Park's expression was grim. That's the genius of it. Daniel Ashford understands something fundamental about human perception. We see what we expect to see. For 15 years, he was a model prisoner. Predictable. Boring. Your guards expected to see him sleeping at 10 p.m., so they saw him sleeping. At 11 p.m., Officer Chen expected a routine check. When he saw the bed empty, his brain jumped to the only conclusion that made sense: escape. But the bed was empty, Marcus protested. Was it? Park turned to his team. Show them. 2 agents entered the cell. They went to the corner, the darkest corner, opposite the door, and reached behind the toilet. They pulled out what looked like a bundle of sheets and blankets arranged in a complex way. No, not sheets. It was Daniel Ashford. He had compressed himself into an impossibly small space behind the toilet, his body folded in ways that shouldn't be anatomically possible. His clothes were mottled gray and white, blending perfectly with the concrete and shadows. His face was pressed against the wall, making him appear two-dimensional. The guards gasped. Holloway felt her stomach drop. "He's been there the whole time?" she whispered. "The whole time," Park confirmed. When Officer Chen did his 10 p.m. check, Daniel was in bed. The moment the door closed, he moved. He positioned himself in that corner using principles of camouflage, lighting angles, and human psychology. He knew exactly where guards would look and where they wouldn't. He knew you'd see an empty bed and immediately assume escape. Confirmation bias would do the rest. They watched as the agents carefully extracted Daniel from his hiding spot. He was unconscious, drugged, they later learned, using medications he'd been hoarding from the prison pharmacy for 3 years, taking only partial doses and hiding the rest. But why? Holloway asked, stunned. If this was his plan, why drug himself? Why not actually escape during the chaos? Park smiled grimly. Because that was never the plan.
I don't understand, Holloway said. If he didn't escape, what was the point? Park pulled up a file on his tablet. While you were searching for Daniel Ashford, what was happening in the rest of the prison? Holloway's eyes widened. Full lockdown. Every guard deployed. We were checking every cell, every corridor, every possible hiding place. Exactly. For 6 hours, your entire staff was focused on finding one man. Security protocols were disrupted. Patterns were broken. Chaos replaced order. Park swiped to another screen. During those 6 hours, did you check the visitor logs? Visitor logs? We weren't allowing visitors during lockdown. Actually, you were. One visitor came through 2 hours after the escape alarm. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, psychiatrist, claiming she had an emergency session scheduled with prisoner 8934, Marcus Webb. Her credentials checked out. In the chaos, the front gate waved her through. Holloway felt cold. Webb, the white-collar criminal, embezzlement, fraud, non-violent offender in minimum security. Dr. Sarah Mitchell doesn't exist, Park said flatly. She's Elena Ashford, Daniel's sister. She walked right through your front gate during the lockdown confusion, met with Marcus Webb in a private consultation room, and walked back out 30 minutes later. But Webb is still in his cell. We checked everyone during lockdown. Park shook his head.
You checked everyone you thought was everyone. Webb is gone. Elena took his place for the duration of her visit, then left. By the time you realized, she and Marcus Webb were already across state lines. That's impossible. How could she impersonate a prisoner? Webb and Elena are similar builds. In the chaos, with guards running everywhere, security protocols breaking down, she wore a prison uniform under her coat, walked into the consultation room as Dr. Mitchell, switched clothes with Webb, he put on her coat and doctor's credentials, walked right out the front door while every guard in the facility was searching for Daniel Ashford in the maximum security wing. The pieces fell into place in Holloway's mind like dominoes. The empty cell was a distraction. The empty cell was the perfect distraction, Park corrected. Daniel Ashford knew he'd never escape from maximum security. Too many cameras, too many locks, too much concrete. But Marcus Webb, in minimum security, with the right distraction and the right timing, easy. But Daniel's still here. He sacrificed his freedom for his partner in crime?
Not partner, Park said quietly. Brother. Marcus Webb is Marcus Ashford. He was the 8th victim of the chessboard killings, except he wasn't a victim at all. He was Daniel's younger brother, and they staged his death together. Marcus went underground with new identity. 15 years later, he got himself arrested on purpose for white-collar crimes, charges that would put him in minimum security prison. He's been here for 6 months, waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for Daniel to create the perfect distraction, which he did. Park looked at the unconscious form of Daniel Ashford. He spent 15 years planning this. Not his own escape, but his brother's. He studied your facility, your guards, your routines. He calculated the exact right time, the exact right approach, the exact psychological trick that would work. He knew you'd focus on the impossible, a man escaping from a locked cell, while ignoring the obvious, someone walking out the front door. Holloway sat down heavily. The chessboard killings, the 7 victims, were they real? Park's expression darkened. Yes, they were real. Daniel Ashford is a killer. But the 8th victim, his brother, was staged to get Marcus out of the investigation, to give him a clean slate. We never knew Marcus was involved because we thought he was dead. And now they're both free. Elena and Marcus. For now, Park said. But Daniel made a mistake. What mistake? This was perfect. Park smiled coldly. He assumed we'd focus on the escape. He didn't account for one thing. We've been monitoring Elena Ashford for 15 years. We knew she'd make a move eventually. We let her walk out with Marcus because we have trackers on her car, her phone, her credit cards. We know exactly where they're going. Then why didn't you stop them? Because Marcus isn't the end game. There's a 9th person, someone who helped them stage the original chessboard killings. Someone high up, someone powerful, someone we've never been able to identify. Marcus and Elena will lead us right to them. Park looked at Daniel Ashford, still unconscious in the corner of his cell. He's brilliant, one of the most intelligent people I've ever encountered. But intelligence isn't the same as wisdom. He loved his brother more than his freedom, and that love made him predictable. 3 days later, Marcus and Yelena were arrested in a compound in Montana. With them was retired FBI Deputy Director Thomas Kiernan, the man who had been feeding the Ashford brothers information for 20 years, the man who had helped them escape justice, the man who had covered up their crimes. But as Park sat across from Daniel Ashford in the interrogation room, he saw something in the man's eyes that bothered him. Not defeat, not even resignation. Satisfaction. "You wanted us to catch them?" Park said slowly. Daniel smiled for the first time in 15 years. "Did I?" "The trackers on Yelena, you knew about them. You'd been planning this for years. You knew we'd follow them." "Perhaps." "Why?" Why sacrifice your brother? Daniel leaned forward, his voice quiet and precise. Agent Park, do you know what the final position in a chess game is called? Checkmate? No, Daniel said. Checkmate is the second to last move. The final position is called resignation, the moment when your opponent realizes they've lost and concedes. But there's a position even more beautiful than checkmate. It's called zugzwang. It's when any move your opponent makes will worsen their position. They're not in checkmate. They're in a situation where every possible choice leads to their defeat. Park felt cold. What are you saying? I'm saying my brother Marcus is innocent. He was never part of the chessboard killings. He was a victim of circumstance, a man who helped his brother fake his death because he was scared, not because he was guilty. He committed white-collar crimes to get into minimum security, yes, but those crimes were victimless. Fraudulent loans from banks that were committing fraud themselves. Embezzlement from corporations that were embezzling from their employees. That's not... And Yelena? Daniel continued. She helped me because she believed Marcus was innocent. She believed I was protecting him from a corrupt system, and she was right. Director Kiernan is corrupt. We have evidence. Evidence I gave you. For 15 years, I've been watching, learning, gathering proof of Kiernan's crimes, real crimes, murders he committed and blamed on others, money he stole, lives he destroyed. I've been the perfect prisoner, so boring and predictable that no one questioned why I spent every waking hour studying law books and old case files. I've built an ironclad case against Kiernan, and I've delivered him to you on a silver platter. Park stared. By sacrificing your brother's freedom? My brother will be released, Daniel said calmly. You have no real evidence against him. His crimes are minor. In exchange for testimony against Kiernan, he'll get immunity. Elena too. And me? He smiled. I'll stay here, because I did kill 7 people, Agent Park. I'm guilty. But the question you need to ask yourself is, why did I kill them? He slid a folder across the table, a folder that had been hidden in his cell that Park's team had somehow missed. Park opened it. Inside were 7 files, 7 people, each one connected to Kiernan, each one a witness to his crimes, each one killed by Kiernan's orders, their deaths blamed on a serial killer who fit the profile perfectly. I killed them because Kiernan was going to kill them anyway, Daniel said quietly. I made it look like a serial killer so the pattern would eventually be noticed. I left the chess pieces as clues, as markers for someone smart enough to follow the thread. And I've spent 15 years waiting for someone like you to finally see it. Park felt reality shifting around him. You're saying you murdered 7 people to save them from being murdered? No. Daniel said, I'm saying I documented 7 murders that Kiernan committed. I was there. I saw them happen. And when I tried to report them, Kiernan was the deputy director of the FBI. Who would believe me? So I became the murderer. I took the blame. I went to prison. And I waited for Kiernan to get arrogant, to think he was untouchable, to make one final mistake. Marcus's escape. Marcus's escape. Daniel confirmed. Kiernan had to personally coordinate it. He had to use his connections, his authority, and when he did, he left a trail you can now follow because you were looking for it. I gave you the distraction you needed to catch the real killer. Park sat back, his mind reeling. Even if this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, you still went to prison. You still spent 15 years in a cell. Yes, Daniel said simply, but Kiernan will spend the rest of his life in one, and 7 families will finally know the truth about who killed their loved ones. That's zugzwang, Agent Park. I've put myself in a position where I lose everything, but in losing, I've ensured that Kiernan loses more. 6 months later, the trial of Thomas Kiernan was the biggest FBI corruption case in 50 years. The evidence Daniel Ashford had gathered was devastating. Kiernan was convicted of 17 murders, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Marcus Ashford received immunity in exchange for testimony. He was released and disappeared into witness protection. Elena was cleared of all charges. She had genuinely believed she was helping an innocent man. Daniel Ashford remained in Blackwood Maximum Security Prison. His sentence was unchanged. When the judge asked if he wanted to appeal, he simply said, "No, Your Honor. I'm exactly where I deserve to be." But something changed in the prison. Guards treated him differently. Not with fear, but with a strange respect. Word had spread about what he'd done. Spent 15 years in prison to catch a killer that the FBI couldn't touch. Warden Holloway visited him personally one afternoon. "I don't understand you," she said. "You could have fought your conviction. With Kiernan's crimes exposed, with Marcus's testimony, with everything we know now, you might have gotten a retrial, possibly even freedom." Daniel looked at her with those calculating eyes. "Warden, do you play chess?" "No." "Then I'll explain it simply. In chess, sometimes you have to sacrifice your most powerful piece to win the game. The queen, the rooks, even yourself. The goal isn't to survive. The goal is to win." "And you won?" "I won," he confirmed. "Kiernan is in prison. The 7 families have answers. Marcus is free. That's winning. But you're still here." "Yes, because some pieces are meant to be sacrificed. And I'm at peace with that." Holloway stood to leave, then paused. "Was the empty cell part of the plan from the beginning?" "What do you think?" Daniel said. That same enigmatic smile. "I think," she said slowly, "that you wanted us to find you hiding in that corner. You wanted us to see how brilliant you are, how meticulously you planned everything. You wanted us to take you seriously when you presented your evidence against Kiernan." "Maybe," Daniel said. "Or maybe I just wanted to prove that I could escape if I wanted to, that I stay here by choice, not because concrete and steel can hold me." After she left, Daniel returned to his cell. The same corner, the same routine he'd followed for 15 years. But now, when the guards did their checks, they looked a little longer at that dark corner behind the toilet, because they knew that Daniel Ashford could make himself invisible whenever he wanted. They knew that when the guards arrived and the cell was empty, the escape had never really begun at all. The end. When the guards arrived, the cell was empty. But emptiness, like silence, is never really empty. It's full of possibilities, of questions, of truths that hide in plain sight. Daniel Ashford understood that the greatest prison isn't made of concrete and steel. It's made of assumptions and expectations. And the greatest escape isn't leaving a cell. It's making people see what you want them to see. Sometimes the most profound truth is that we're all prisoners of our own perceptions. And the only way to truly be free is to control what others perceive. In the end, Daniel Ashford never escaped from Blackwood Maximum Security Prison. He was there the whole time, hiding in plain sight, orchestrating a masterpiece that took 15 years to complete.
And that, perhaps, is the most perfect escape of all.